The airport was louder than usual that afternoon. Flights were delayed, announcements kept changing, and people were spread across every chair, wall, and corner. A single father sat near the window with his small child resting against his chest. The child was half asleep, holding a worn toy with one missing eye. The father kept his arm wrapped gently around the child, afraid that even a small movement might wake them. He had not slept much the night before. Being alone with a child on a long trip had become normal for him, but it never became easy. He checked the departure board again, already knowing the flight would not leave any time soon. The storm outside had slowed everything. He sighed quietly and adjusted the strap of his bag under his feet. Around him, people complained on phones, argued with staff, and paced back and forth. He did not join them. Years of raising a child alone had taught him patience. Some things could not be rushed, no matter how unfair they felt. A few steps away, a woman moved to the crowded lounge with calm control. She wore simple clothes, but the way she walked made people step aside without knowing why. Her eyes scanned the room, not with fear, but with sharp awareness. Two men stood at a distance, pretending not to watch her, yet never letting her out of sight. She had just finished a difficult call and needed to sit. Every seat was taken. Her schedule was tight, and attention was the last thing she wanted. The delay had already caused problems she did not want to think about. A sudden announcement echoed through the speakers, causing people to stand at once, thinking boarding had begun. Chairs scraped the floor. Bags were pulled up in the confusion. The woman turned quickly and stepped back, looking for a place to rest for even a moment. She did not realize what she was doing until it was too late. She sat down, but there was no chair beneath her. The father felt a sudden weight and froze. His eyes widened, but his body stayed still. The child shifted slightly, but did not wake. For a brief second, neither of them spoke. The world around them continued to move, but time felt locked in place for the two of them. The woman realized instantly. Her posture stiffened. Embarrassment flashed across her face, but it vanished just as fast. Her eyes moved quickly, checking the room, the people nearby, the phones raised in hands, the whispers beginning to form. Before the father could say a word, she leaned closer and whispered, very low and very clear, "Don't move." Her voice was calm, not playful, not rude. It sounded like someone used to being obeyed, but also someone trying to prevent something worse. The father swallowed. His heart beat fast, but he stayed still. He was confused, uncomfortable, and unsure, yet something in her tone told him this was not a joke. He glanced down at his child, still asleep, breathing softly. "I'm sorry," he whispered back, barely moving his lips. "There's a child." "I see," she said quietly. Just a moment. Around them, people continued to argue and complain. A few noticed a strange scene but quickly looked away, unsure what they were seeing. The two men watching her from afar stiffened but did not move yet. The woman adjusted slightly, careful not to shift too much weight. Her face remained composed, though her jaw tightened. The father stared straight ahead, feeling heat rise to his face. He wanted to disappear, but he refused to panic. Panic would wake the child. Panic would draw attention. Seconds passed. Each one felt longer than the last. Finally, she stood up smoothly, as if nothing unusual had happened. She turned, placed a hand lightly on the armrest of a nearby chair that had just been abandoned, and sat down properly. The moment was over. She looked at him once more. "Thank you," she said quietly. He nodded, still unsure what he had just been part of. "It's fine," he replied. She turned away, already focused elsewhere. The two men relaxed slightly, though they stayed alert. Whatever danger had passed was gone, at least for now. The father let out a slow breath he did not realize he had been holding. His hand shook a little. He tightened his hold on the child, who stirred but remained asleep. He told himself it was nothing, just an awkward accident. Airports were full of them. Still, something about it stayed with him. The woman had not acted like someone embarrassed by a mistake. She had acted like someone avoiding a problem much bigger than a simple misunderstanding. Minutes later, the lounge quieted again. People returned to their seats. The storm outside showed no sign of ending. The father reached into his bag and pulled out a small snack, setting it beside him for when the child woke. Across the room, the woman sat with her legs crossed, listening as one of the men spoke softly to her. She nodded once, her expression unreadable. Her eyes drifted back to the father for a brief moment, then away. She had spent her life surrounded by people who watched her closely, people who wanted something: power, money, attention. In that short, awkward moment, this man had wanted nothing at all. He had only wanted to protect his child. That thought stayed with her longer than she expected. An announcement broke the silence again. Another delay. Groans filled the air. The father smiled faintly at the sound, as if it no longer mattered. He had learned that waiting was part of life. The child finally woke, rubbing tired eyes. "Are we there?" the child asked softly. "Not yet," the father replied. "But we will be." The child nodded, trusting him completely, and leaned back against his chest. The father looked out the window at the rain and thought about how strange life could be, how 1 second you were invisible, and the next caught in a moment you would never forget. He did not know who the woman was. He did not know that her face was known across the world, or that her decisions moved markets and shaped futures. To him, she was just a tired stranger who needed help for a few seconds. And that was exactly why the moment mattered. Somewhere in the airport, a phone buzzed with breaking news. Somewhere else, a meeting was being rearranged. But right there, in that crowded lounge, 2 very different lives had crossed without either fully understanding why. The storm continued outside, unaware that something small but meaningful had already changed inside. The lounge gradually emptied as passengers were called to their flights. The father and child remained huddled near the window, watching the rain cascade against the glass. The storm showed no signs of letting up, and with each announcement that a flight was delayed again, a low murmur of frustration rolled through the remaining travelers. He held his child close, feeling the small body relax against his chest. There was a rhythm to the breathing, a simple trust that filled him with quiet warmth. Even as he tried to focus on comforting the child, his mind kept returning to the woman who had accidentally sat on his lap. He could not explain why. She had been calm, composed, and in control, yet something about the situation lingered in his thoughts. He kept replaying her words in his mind. "Don't move." There had been no anger, no embarrassment, only a warning, a request, a plea almost. But why had she chosen him, of all people, to trust in that fleeting moment? It was a question without an answer, yet it planted a strange curiosity. Nearby, people were gathering their belongings and talking quietly. A few glanced toward him and the child, sensing the lingering tension from before, but mostly they ignored him, returning to their own concerns. The father looked down at his hands, roughened from work, and holding a small, comforting snack for his child. He wondered how life had taken him here, alone, with so little and yet so much responsibility. He had learned to navigate the world quietly, without expecting much from anyone. Yet, moments like these reminded him how unpredictable life could be. Meanwhile, the woman had found a seat near the back, out of the main flow of travelers. She adjusted herself carefully and whispered something into a phone. Her voice was calm, but her eyes revealed the tension beneath the surface. It was rare for someone to see her in a vulnerable state, even for a brief second. Her usual world was one of meetings, decisions, and constant scrutiny, but for that split second, she had relied on a stranger who wanted nothing, who expected nothing. The realization was unsettling. She thought about the man's reaction. He had not flinched. He had not questioned her. He had simply stayed still, keeping his child safe, following an instinct she had not seen before. Most people, she knew, would have reacted differently, with anger, confusion, or embarrassment. But not him. That brief moment had shown her something she rarely witnessed: quiet integrity and genuine care. The father finally shifted slightly, placing the snack in front of the child as the little one's curiosity began to grow. "Do you want a bite?" he asked softly. The child nodded, taking a small piece and chewing carefully, eyes still wide from sleep, just ended. There was something innocent and raw in the way the child moved, a vulnerability that the father had protected for years. That responsibility, That constant awareness had shaped him into someone patient, careful, and strong in ways that no one could measure. He looked around, noticing the subtle ways the lounge had changed. People were quieter now, settling into waiting, accepting the delays as inevitable. He found a strange sense of calm in the shared pause, as though the world had collectively agreed to wait with them. Yet, the memory of the woman sat persistently at the edge of his thoughts. He wondered who she was, why she had been there, and why the brief connection had felt so significant. At the same time, she was thinking about him. She had been surrounded by staff, assistants, and guards all her life. Most people had been focused on what she could give, what she could do for them, or what she represented. Rarely did anyone simply act with genuine concern, without calculation. This man had done that instinctively, without hesitation, and it had caught her off guard. For a moment, she considered how rare such encounters were, and how quickly they passed, often unnoticed and unremembered. Yet, this one lingered. The father picked up his bag and checked his phone. Emails and messages flashed across the screen, but he ignored them. He had learned over the years that not everything required immediate attention. Some things could wait, and some things, like the brief touch of human connection, were far more important. He glanced out the window, watching the storm, feeling the small hand of his child brush against his arm. It was grounding, a reminder of the life he had chosen, and the life that had chosen him. A sudden noise drew his attention. A group of people entered the lounge quickly, cameras flashing and phones out. The father instinctively pulled the child closer, sensing the energy shift in the room. He could feel tension building, subtle but undeniable. The woman had noticed too. Her eyes flicked up from her phone, scanning the room with precision. She was no stranger to attention, yet she moved with an economy of motion that suggested both caution and experience. Within moments, she was standing again, signaling to a nearby staff member, motioning them to manage the situation discreetly. The cameras moved past him, the flashes of light briefly illuminating his face and the child. He kept his calm, breathing slowly, speaking softly to the child to maintain a sense of normalcy. In those moments, he realized how different their worlds were. People had recognized her, but they had not seen him. He was invisible, unnoticed, yet he had played a small but pivotal role in a moment she would remember. That thought gave him a quiet satisfaction. The crowd began to settle, though whispers persisted. The woman returned to her seat, this time at a safe distance, yet her eyes continued to drift toward the father. She was curious, fascinated even by his quiet confidence and the way he had managed the unexpected. In a life filled with calculated encounters and strategic interactions, this was refreshingly different. She wondered if she would ever see him again, though she knew that chances were slim. Most encounters passed unnoticed, leaving only a fleeting impression, but this one had left a lasting mark. The father, unaware of her observation, focused on his child. "Do you want to draw while we wait?" he asked, pulling a small notepad from his bag. The child nodded enthusiastically, reaching for a pencil. Together, they began sketching small, simple shapes on the paper. It was a quiet activity, yet it brought a sense of peace to both of them. The storm outside continued unabated, but inside the small bubble of their corner, the world felt manageable. Time passed slowly. The father watched the people around him, noticing subtle details he would have missed in a rush. The woman had left her seat for a brief moment, moving to speak with her staff again, but the fleeting eye contact they exchanged was enough to remind her of the earlier incident. She returned quickly, resuming her position, aware that her presence was being carefully monitored. For the father, the memory of her words, so calm, so deliberate, remained in his mind. He could not explain why it had struck him so deeply. Life was filled with accidental moments, brief intersections with strangers, and fleeting exchanges that carried weight disproportionate to their duration. Yet, this one had felt significant, and he knew he would carry it with him long after the storm had passed and the lounge had emptied. As the hours dragged on, the father reflected on his life. Raising a child alone had been challenging, exhausting, and often thankless. Yet moments like this reminded him of the quiet dignity in persistence, in doing the right thing without expecting recognition. He glanced at his child's drawing, a small smile spreading across his face at the careful effort and imagination it contained. The woman continued to observe the environment, her staff moving efficiently around her. She had dealt with crises far larger than the storm delay, yet something about the father's calm, protective demeanor had left an impression. It was a reminder that not all strength was visible, not all influence came from power or wealth. Sometimes true impact was quiet and unassuming. Eventually, the announcement shifted, signaling that boarding would soon begin. People gathered their belongings, stretching and preparing to leave. The father packed up his small supplies, keeping his child close, ensuring nothing would be forgotten. The woman stood once more, signaling to her staff, preparing to depart discreetly. Before they left, their eyes met briefly across the lounge. There was no need for words. The unspoken acknowledgement of the shared moment hung in the air. She gave the faintest nod, a silent thank you, and moved toward her waiting transport. He watched her go, the weight of the encounter settling into a quiet understanding. As the father and child finally moved toward their gate, he reflected on the strange turn of events. Life was unpredictable, and sometimes, in the midst of chaos, small moments of human connection appeared where least expected. He did not know if he would see the woman again, but he knew he would remember her words, her calm presence, and the reminder that even in the busiest, most chaotic places, human kindness and instinct could create moments of lasting impact. The storm outside continued, but inside the father felt a small warmth. Life would move forward, uncertain as ever, yet enriched by the brief, remarkable intersection with a stranger who had trusted him, if only for a fleeting second. Days passed since the incident at the airport, but the father could not shake the memory of the woman. He returned to his usual routine, work, childcare, and the small tasks that filled every hour. Yet, whenever he had a quiet moment, his mind drifted back to the lounge, the rain, the sudden wait, and the calm words whispered in a crowded room. It was strange how one brief encounter could linger, creating a quiet ripple through his life. He went about his days with a child at his side, watching as little moments of joy and curiosity unfolded. Breakfast shared in hurried mornings, walks in park, and bedtime stories became grounding rituals. Each action carried the weight of responsibility, yet also small victories that often went unnoticed. He rarely thought about himself, only about ensuring that his child felt safe, valued, and loved. Meanwhile, the woman returned to a world of urgency and precision. She had flown back to her office in another city, meetings stacking one after another. Her assistants and advisors moved swiftly, reminding her of deadlines, appointments, and public appearances. She appeared composed to everyone else, as always, but her mind wandered back to the man with the child. The brief moment at the airport had unsettled her in ways she did not expect. It was not just the unexpected situation. It was the instinctive calm and quiet integrity of the father. People in her life often acted out of obligation or expectation, but he had done nothing except respond with basic decency. The memory stayed with her during long meetings and briefings. She found herself wondering what life looked like on the other side of privilege, what it meant to struggle quietly, to make decisions for someone else every day without acknowledgement or reward. She did not know his name, where he worked, or how he managed his life, but she had a growing curiosity, not of intrusion, but of genuine interest. A week after the airport, she found herself reviewing a schedule for a charity event focused on children. Her staff highlighted key donors, media coverage, and logistics, but she paused, remembering the man and child. She wondered if he had a similar concern for other children, if his quiet resilience extended beyond his own household. For a brief moment, she imagined reaching out, connecting in a meaningful way, but she dismissed it immediately. Her world was not built for spontaneous encounters, and she had learned to respect boundaries, even those of strangers who had touched her unexpectedly. Back in the father's life, ordinary challenges continued to pile up. The child school had forms to fill, medical appointments to keep, and little emergencies that required calm thinking. He moved through them methodically, never allowing the stress to show, shielding the child from the weight he carried inside. It was tiring, often lonely work, but he had mastered the art of patience. Small triumphs, a finished homework assignment, a smile, a hug, made every struggle worthwhile. One afternoon, The father opened a newspaper while the child played nearby. The headline caught his attention, a story about a billionaire philanthropist making headlines for her charity work. He glanced at the photograph, immediately recognizing the woman from the airport. His heart skipped a beat, and he turned the page quickly, uncertain why the image had such an impact. There was a mixture of awe and confusion, realizing that the woman who had trusted him in that fleeting moment was someone whose decisions could affect thousands, perhaps millions. Yet, for all her influence and status, she had relied on him for a brief, ordinary act of care. He reflected on the irony of the situation. His life was simple, guided by responsibility and love, while hers was complex, structured by power and expectation. Yet, their paths had crossed in a moment of pure humanity. The thought made him smile faintly, a quiet warmth that lingered despite the busyness of his daily life. The woman, in her office, decided to follow a quiet instinct. She asked her assistant to find information about a man she had briefly noticed at the airport, someone who had remained calm under unusual circumstances. She did not want to intrude, only to understand more about someone who had acted without calculation, someone whose behavior had left a lasting impression. The assistant began discreet inquiries, careful to respect privacy, aware that even small contact could have unforeseen consequences. At the same time, the father continued his routines, unaware of any attention from the other side. He went to the park, carried groceries, and managed the child's bedtime with a practiced rhythm. Life was a series of small, deliberate acts, each reinforcing his quiet strength. He did not seek recognition or reward. Yet, the memory of the airport lingered, a gentle reminder that life could be unexpectedly intertwined with strangers in ways that left a lasting impact. During a quiet evening, he sat by the child's bed, reading a story and watching the soft rise and fall of the chest as sleep approached. He reflected on the fleeting moments that shaped human experience, small acts of trust, unexpected encounters, the chance to act with care in a world that often demanded speed and attention. The memory of the woman's calm presence returned, not as distraction, but as a subtle lesson in observation and understanding. Meanwhile, she continued her work, balancing meetings, public appearances, and strategic planning. Yet, the encounter at the airport reminded her of the value of observation, of noticing the quiet resilience in others. She realized that her perspective was often narrowed by expectation and position. Rarely did she meet someone who acted purely out of integrity, without regard for reward or recognition. The father's simple act of patience and care had reminded her of that human truth. Days turned into weeks, and the father remained unaware of the quiet inquiries being made on his behalf. Life continued in its familiar rhythm, punctuated by small joys and challenges. Yet, the subtle awareness of the shared moment remained, guiding him to continue with patience and care, reinforcing the quiet dignity that had been his guiding principle for so long. The woman, finally convinced that her curiosity was more than fleeting, decided to approach the situation carefully. She arranged for a charitable initiative in the city where he lived, an event focused on children and families. The plan was not to contact him directly, but to create an opportunity for him to become involved voluntarily, should he wish to do so. It was a delicate approach, respecting boundaries while opening a path for connection. The father, still unaware, received a flyer from the local community center. It described an event supporting children's education and health, something that resonated deeply with him. He considered attending, thinking it could be a chance to expose a child to a wider world, to learn, to see how others contributed. Little did he know that the event was connected to the woman who had accidentally sat on his lap weeks earlier. He prepared carefully, ensuring the child's needs were met, packing snacks, drawing materials, and small comforts. The child's excitement was contagious, and the father allowed himself a rare moment of anticipation. For all the struggles and responsibilities, these small experiences of shared discovery were the threads that stitched their lives together. At the event, the father arrived early, observing quietly, managing the child's curiosity while taking in the environment. Volunteers moved efficiently, setting up tables, distributing materials, and welcoming families. He noticed a figure moving through the crowd, composed, observing, and giving subtle guidance. For a moment, their eyes met. Recognition flickered across her face, though she did not approach immediately. The connection was quiet, unspoken, yet undeniable. The child tugged at his sleeve, asking questions about the activities and colors. The father guided gently, explaining the purpose of the event, helping the child interact with other children, and observing the small acts of kindness unfolding around them. He was unaware that the woman watched from a distance, taking in his interactions, noting the care, patience, and integrity that he carried effortlessly. Time moved slowly, measured in laughter, small discoveries, and shared moments. The father remained focused on his child, ensuring every action contributed to safety, comfort, and understanding. He did not notice the careful observation from afar, the subtle acknowledgement of his quiet strength. As the event progressed, the woman made the decision to approach, carefully, respectfully, with no intrusion, no expectations. She moved through the crowd, maintaining composure, preparing to meet someone who had acted with integrity without knowing the significance of the encounter. For both of them, the moment was approaching, the continuation of a story that had begun with a simple, accidental act of trust. The day of the charity event arrived, clear and bright after a week of storms. The father prepared carefully, making sure the child had everything needed: snacks, water, a small notebook, and favorite crayons. The child bounced with excitement, tugging at the father's hand and asking questions about what they might see and do. The father smiled, feeling a warmth that came from the shared anticipation and small pleasures of life. They arrived at the community center early, giving themselves time to settle in. The father scanned the room, noting volunteers arranging tables, colorful banners, and the quiet hum of preparation. Families began to trickle in, children laughing and running, parents keeping careful watch. He held his child's hand, guiding gently, keeping both calm and engaged. Meanwhile, she arrived discreetly, accompanied by a small assistant who ensured her presence was managed quietly. She walked with measured steps, observing the volunteers and guests without drawing attention. Her eyes swept across the room until they found him. Recognition flickered, subtle but undeniable. She saw the calm authority in his movements, the patience in every interaction, and a quiet confidence that did not seek acknowledgement. The father noticed her only peripherally, aware of someone moving with purpose but not paying much attention. His focus was on the child, explaining the different activities, encouraging participation, and helping other children feel included. He did not realize that the woman was watching, noting every detail, quietly impressed by his ability to handle a busy, chaotic environment with ease and grace. As the event progressed, the woman decided it was time to introduce herself. She moved closer, careful not to startle anyone, and approached the father as he guided his child to an art activity. Her presence was calm, unassuming, and respectful. She smiled briefly, a quiet acknowledgement of the earlier encounter at the airport. "Hello," she said softly, careful not to disrupt the ongoing activities. The father looked up, slightly surprised by the friendly voice. Recognition dawned slowly as he remembered the airport incident. "Oh," he said, nodding politely. "I remember you." She smiled, a mix of relief and curiosity. "Yes, I suppose you do. I wanted to thank you again for handling that moment with patience. It meant a lot." He hesitated, unsure how to respond. "It was nothing. Just normal, I guess. You were in a difficult situation." She studied him for a moment, noticing the quiet honesty in his words. It was refreshing, unexpected. Most people in her life spoke with calculation, expecting something in return, but he simply spoke as himself. It was grounding, a reminder that human connection could exist without expectation. The child tugged gently at the father's sleeve. "Can we paint now?" the child asked eagerly. The father nodded, turning his attention back to the activity, guiding the child to a table with paints. The woman observed quietly, understanding the subtle but powerful bond between them. It was the kind of care that could not be taught, only practiced through experience and dedication. She knelt briefly to speak with a volunteer, giving instructions and encouragement before turning back to father. "You have a beautiful way with them," she said, gesturing to the child. "It's rare to see someone so calm and focused, even with so much happening around them." He shrugged lightly, brushing off the compliment. "It's just par life. You do what you have to do." She nodded, recognizing the depth and the simplicity of his statement. There was no arrogance, no self-importance, only quiet dedication. It was a quality she had observed in few people, and it drew her attention naturally, without forcing connection. They spent the next hour in comfortable proximity. The father guided his child through various activities, painting, drawing, and interacting with other children, while the woman managed her responsibilities, checking on volunteers and ensuring everything ran smoothly. Occasionally, their eyes met, and a silent understanding passed between them. No words were needed. The shared experience of observing human kindness, dedication, and care bridged the gap between their worlds. At one point, the child ran to her, carrying a small painting to show. She bent down, smiling warmly. "That's wonderful," she said genuinely, complimenting the child without pretense. The father watched silently, noting the authentic kindness she displayed. It was a different side of her, away from the public persona, grounded in the simple joy of connecting with a child. Later, the event moved outside, with games and activities under the sunny sky. The father kept a watchful eye on the child, ensuring safety and fun. The woman moved among the participants, offering quiet guidance, occasionally checking in with the father to ensure everything was running smoothly. Their interactions remained natural, respectful, and unforced. During a quieter moment, she found herself standing beside him, observing how he managed a small group of children working together. "You handle this well," she said softly, not as a compliment, but as an acknowledgement of his ability to balance care and authority effortlessly. He looked at her, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "I've had plenty of practice," he replied lightly, a gentle humor in his tone. "It's a lot of responsibility, but someone has to do it." She nodded, absorbing the simplicity and truth of his words. There was no desire to impress, no hidden motives, only a man performing his duty with integrity and compassion. She realized that this quality, so rare in her experience, was profoundly impactful. It made her reflect on her own life, her responsibilities, and the value of human connection beyond status or wealth. As the day progressed, the event became more energetic. Children laughed, parents encouraged, volunteers moved efficiently, and small victories unfolded throughout the activities. The father and child remained at the center of a small orbit, managing participation, comfort, and engagement with care and patience. The woman observed, occasionally interacting with volunteers, but always aware of the quiet strength exhibited by the father. By late afternoon, the event began to wind down. Families gathered their belongings, volunteers tidied up, and a gentle calm settled over the area. The father knelt beside the child, helping pack their small supplies, ensuring nothing was forgotten. The child hugged him tightly, expressing gratitude and joy in simple, unspoken ways. He felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that the day had gone well, and that the child had enjoyed a meaningful experience. The woman approached him once more, a smile on her face. "It's been a pleasure seeing you today," she said softly. "I want to make sure you knew how much I appreciated the care you show. It's inspiring." He nodded politely, feeling a mixture of humility and appreciation. "Thank you. It means a lot, but really it's just part of life. We do what we can." She studied him for a moment longer, recognizing the depth in his simplicity. It was rare to meet someone so grounded, someone whose actions spoke louder than words. She realized that these small, consistent acts of care had a power that was often overlooked but profoundly meaningful. Before leaving, they exchanged one final glance, a silent acknowledgement of shared understanding. No promises, no expectations, just a mutual recognition of integrity, patience, and kindness. The father gathered the child's hand, ready to leave, feeling a quiet warmth that lingered long after the event had ended. As they walked away, the father reflected on the day. Life was unpredictable, filled with challenges and unexpected encounters. Yet, moments like these, brief intersections of worlds, small acts of trust, and recognition of human decency, carry a weight far greater than any recognition or reward. He had experienced something rare, something quietly transformative, without even realizing it. The woman returned to her responsibilities, observing the ripple effects of the event and the genuine care displayed by the father. She understood that influence was not just about power or wealth. It was about action, presence, and integrity. In a single afternoon, she had witnessed a kind of dedication and patience that left a lasting impact, proving that true influence often came quietly, without fanfare, through acts of care and respect for others. Both of them left the event with an understanding that their lives had intersected in meaningful ways. For the father, it was a reminder of the quiet strength in everyday responsibility. For the woman, it was a lesson in the enduring power of integrity and human connection. And for both, the brief, respectful, and natural interaction had created a lasting impression, shaping their perspectives and reinforcing the value of kindness, patience, and trust. The weeks following the charity event were quiet, yet the father noticed subtle changes in his perspective. Life continued with its usual responsibilities: school runs, grocery shopping, bedtime routines. But the memory of the event and the brief encounters with the woman stayed with him. He thought about the calm, composed figure who had acknowledged his efforts without judgment or expectation. It had reminded him that small acts of integrity and patience mattered, even when unnoticed by most. He returned to the routines of work and home life, still alone in raising his child, yet feeling an inner reassurance. The child thrived under his care, full of curiosity and energy, and each small success brought him a quiet sense of pride. He realized that life was not measured by grandeur or recognition, but by the simple, consistent acts of care that shaped a child's experience and a family's stability. Meanwhile, the woman returned to her busy life of travel, meetings, and oversight of complex projects. Yet, she continued to reflect on the father's presence at the charity event. Unlike most people she met, he acted without calculation, without seeking advantage, and with genuine attention to another human being. It was a rare quality that had captured her interest, not as a fleeting curiosity, but as a reminder of the true value of human connection. Months later, she initiated a follow-up to the event, a program supporting children in education and community development. Invitations were sent to local families, emphasizing volunteer participation and interactive activities. She ensured the father and child would be among the invited, not because she sought recognition or gratitude, but to provide a genuine opportunity for meaningful involvement. The father received the invitation and considered it carefully. He had no knowledge of her presence or influence, only that the program sounded worthwhile and aligned with his values. He,